CNN, America's campaign headquarters.
Live from Washington, the Capitol Gang.
Welcome to a special one-hour edition of Capitol Gang. I'm Mark Shields with Al Hunt, Robert Novak, and Cato Byrne. Our guest is former Democratic Senator Dale Bumpers of Arkansas. It's great to have you back, Dale.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to have you. In the early morning hours today, federal agents seized Elian Gonzalez from the home of his Miami relatives and took him to Washington for a reunion there with his father.
Unfortunately, the Miami relatives rejected our efforts, leaving us no other option. After negotiating through the night, I informed the parties that time had run out. At that moment, I gave the go-ahead for the operation.
I believe that it was the right thing to do. She made the decision, she managed this, but I fully support what she did.
This action followed a federal appellate court injunction which barred the boys' return to Cuba, at least until a May 9th custody hearing.
When the two are reunited, they will remain in the United States during the appellate process.
Cato Byrne, since the Miami family refused to bargain, what realistic option did the Attorney General have?
Well, Mark, she could have abided by what the 11th Circuit said this week. They strongly criticize the INS for how they've handled this, pointing out the INS has ignored its own procedures. They recognize what Janet Reno has failed to, has refused to. The child has rights separate and distinct from his father. So what she could have done was take care of the factual disputes, and there were factual disputes here, in a custody hearing in family state court. The original INS position was it was a family state court matter, or in a full-blown hearing, which the 11th Circuit anticipates might happen. Instead, she relied on, I looked in his eyes law. She's not only winging it on the law, according to the 11th Circuit, she's winging it on the facts. She's just decided on her own that I looked Juan Miguel in the eye and I decided this is what's best. That's not how we resolve these disputes.
Dale Bumpers, did she have an option?
I don't think she did, and I don't think the American people thought she had an option. At Waco, she was charged with being impetuous and impatient. In this case, she was the personification of patience. She waited and waited and waited. And after all, the great uncle in whose custody Elian had been placed, or was placed, said, I'm not going to turn him over. If they want him, they're going to have to come and get him. And that's what they did.
That's what they did, Bob.
You know, it's deja vu all over again. Janet Reno saying, time has run out. What is this? We can't wait any longer. Why couldn't they wait any longer? The president, as in Waco, saying, I didn't make that decision. Good decision, but I didn't make that decision. The interesting thing is that she couldn't wait because at the time of the hearing, if they brought the boy in and he said, I want to stay here, I don't want to go back to Cuba, they'd be finished under the terms of the 11th Circuit opinion. But so they have got now they're behind. No American can get in to the Air Force base. No reporter can get in. What kind of brainwashing they're doing with that little boy? Whether there are Cuban interest people there, their lawyer says he saw them there. So I think it's a deplorable situation.
Al, do you think brainwashing is going on and that this is all part of a major scheme?
This is such a distortion also of the law. The Supreme Court has said that these are decisions that ought to be made by the Attorney General, not by courts to begin with. They ruled that in the Guatemalan case last year. This little boy hadn't been there for 15 hours or 15 days. He'd been there for almost 150 days. And there was a very easy way for this incident this morning not to have occurred. If Lázaro González had been willing to obey the law, we're a nation of laws, and turn that child over, then there would have been none of this problem at all. Mark, just one more point, if I may. Cardinal Bernard Law, the very conservative Archbishop of Boston, wrote this week that the natural bond, I'm going to quote this now, it's a column in the Boston Globe, between a father and a son is of far greater value than a visit with Mickey Mouse or a glass of chocolate milk or even the superiority of a system of government. That's what was at play here.
Well, the Archbishop of Miami has said no such thing, and he's a lot closer to the situation and to the kind of life this child will have when he goes back. The Attorney General is not allowed to make these decisions without any overview. And what the 11th Circuit said is the INS abused its discretion, and that's obviously what the role of the court is. You know, the first time the INS had any contact with this child was when an INS agent poked a submachine gun in his chest. That was the very first time the INS had any contact with him, and the 11th Circuit said you should have talked to the child. If there are questions about the fitness of this father or how free he is to speak his mind, and I think there are huge questions about that, that can only be determined in a factual hearing in a court, and that's the one thing Janet Reno's determined to avoid.
Was it, though, your own judgment, Dale, Holy Saturday, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, I mean, you know, overwhelmingly Roman Catholic community. I mean, should there have been greater sensitivity to that? I mean, waiting until Monday, or?
No, absolutely not. Let me ask all of you this question. What if Janet Reno had said, Monday afternoon at 2 p.m., we're coming to get Ellie? What do you think would have happened? Everybody knows what would have happened.
10,000 people?
Absolutely. You got to face up to one thing, Mark, which I think is very important. Elliot has been placed with his father where he should have been placed a long time ago. Number two, nobody got hurt. Number three, he's going to get a chance to bond with his father. Number four, I disagree with the court decision that was rendered last week. I disagree strongly with it, but that court decision will be honored.
But
he
it's
will
still
have an
binding.
opportunity. He'll have an
The
opportunity.
Miami relatives broke no laws here. I don't know why people keep saying that. Nobody can name a single law the Miami relatives broke.
Dale, there's two kinds of Americans, and I'm afraid you're in the majority. I hate to think of it, but I think you are in the majority. That's the first time I've said that to you, I think. But I really believe the majority of Americans think that, as poor Archbishop Law says, Cardinal Law says, that it's just a difference in a preferable form of government to another form of government. It isn't. One is a godless, totalitarian, brutal dictatorship accused of drug running, and the other is freedom. I pick freedom any day.
Let me just say one thing.
I've been very patient on this. Cardinal Law has been to Cuba 10 times. He does not defend the Cuban system. He's a strong critic of it, and he has not fallen the ranks of the godless by any means. But this is more than Cardinal Law. I want to say a word about Janet Reno. Janet Reno she steps up to the plate and takes the tough ones of this administration.
Makes mistakes.
I'll say, I think she does the right thing. You can argue how she does the right. This was the right decision to make by every definition. She does it. She sometimes doesn't do it well, and this will be an awful picture in that house. It'll be a vivid photo. It'll be the most remembered photo of the armed INS agent with the gun in the house, and that will be lasting. It's not like the schoolhouse door, the desegregation of George Wallace in Alabama, which was a different one.
And of course, is whether you believe in the rule of law, which is what they did today, Kate. It's precisely what they did. Let me finish, please. What happened today? It took 3 minutes. That's all it took. No one was hurt. No one was killed. That child got out safe. And I'm sorry, Bob. Those are the facts, and that was a very successful mission. You're right. She deserves credit.
Last word, Al Hunt, Dale Bumpers, and the gang will be back with the political fallout.
Capital Gang is brought to you by Williams, Energy, Communications, Leadership.
Shore of Maryland, where the Mideast peace talks have been held. In the meanwhile, the Cuban community in Florida reacted in anger to the seizure of Elian.
What you saw here tonight was one of the most shameful acts that I have ever seen our federal government become involved in. There was no need to send armed men with machine guns at tow to go inside the house.
On the day before the government acted, Vice President Gore kept his distance.
I personally believe that any decision on custody should be made on the basis of what's in the best interest of the child, with an evaluation of the child by people who actually meet with the child and make a psychological evaluation.
Today, the Vice President issued this statement, quote, "As I have said, I believe this issue should have been handled through a family court and with the family coming together." His Republican opponent, Texas Governor George W. Bush, issued this statement, quote, "The chilling picture of a little boy being removed from his home at gunpoint defied the values of America and is not an image a freedom-loving nation wants to show the world," end quote. Republicans in Congress, Senate Majority Leader Trent Lott and House Majority Whip Tom DeLay attacked the federal government's action as resembling the Castro dictatorship. Al Hunt, who are the political winners and the losers here?
I think Al Gore is a loser, not for his position because there's a sense that he was opportunistic in this issue. But I think the hopes of George Bush and Tom DeLay and Trent Lott and the mayor of Miami, who I think have demagogued and distorted some of what happened on this, that they're going to get great political mileage out of this. It's not going to be realized, Mark. The American people, there's been saturation coverage. The American people are fully informed about this. And by an overwhelming majority, to Bob Novak's great dismay, they say a son belongs with his father.
Bob Novak, whose name was mentioned here just seconds ago, you really get the sense that for 41 years, Bob, there has been this Castro-U.S. thing, and now it's down to Castro and Dade County, Florida.
As I said, Dale was in the majority, and I regret it. But I think that may have been another change in the tide today. As you said, that image of these military uniformed marshals going in there, smashing in the door, wielding their guns, smashing up the bedroom, and this is something that is not exceptional. This is the way our federal law enforcement agencies work. And anybody criticize you, say, well, you're with the vigilantes or with the militia or something. That's baloney. This is a problem for this country, and this was another despicable example of excess. And I would tell you this could change the political equation. I think Gore is smart to get off the bandwagon on this.
Dale Bumpers, political loser.
I don't know who the political loser out of it is. I think, incidentally, I think Bill Clinton has been very, I think he has been very measured in his comments, and I think he comes off very well. He's not running for anything. I don't know how this will affect, I was rather surprised by the strident remarks of George W. Bush, because I can tell you the American people are going to get a good night's sleep tonight for the first time in a very long time. The American people are glad this is over. And while I'm at it, Robert, let me ask you this question. You know, Republicans have been lecturing us for 20 years now about family values. That includes a father being bonded with his son. Whatever happened to the family value part of it? The Castro has nothing to do with this. Castro has nothing to do with it.
What about the family values of the little kids they're pulling out of their families and they're going to put them in this government house with aliens? How about their family values?
Today he was returned to the custody of Castro. This child was returned to the custody of Castro. You know, I assume, though, the senator could be right here. It might not bother the American public. What a shame that will be, that they're willing to sit back and let a special forces type operation with loaded submachine guns move in on a family that is law-abiding. There was no court order or anything else these people were abusing. To take at point of a gun a 6-year-old. This is not how we settle custody disputes in America, but you might be right. Maybe the public's so tired of the story, they're just as happy. But let's not kid ourselves. Castro now has custody of this child. The one thing the public's not very well informed about, they're all worried about whether or not the child looked as though he'd been prepped on that video last week. What about the fact that Juan Miguel Gonzalez has not been out of the company of Castro's agents and allies since he's been here? How many of the public do you suppose realize that the mother of his other baby has a 6-year-old back home in Cuba? Why isn't that 6-year-old with her?
Katie, let me ask you a simple question. You were talking about these people coming there armed with machine guns and so on. Let me ask you this question. Janet Reno said they had intelligence. They thought there were weapons inside it.
She
but
was
let me
wrong.
ask you this.
Wasn't she?
Let me ask you.
She was wrong.
Your brother, your son, if your brother or your son or your father or anybody else was in that group, would you want them to have walked in that house unarmed?
We don't do that to law-abiding Americans. They raided that place
as though
armed to the teeth drug agents were there.
How'd you like the way they handled themselves?
I thought they handled themselves very well, and I don't believe that business about a submachine gun being pointed at this child.
It was a photograph of it.
Say, you're going to go with me, kid,
but the photographer said it wasn't, Kate. The photographer said there's no evidence. When he looked at it, the person who took the picture, I mean, you and Trent Lott say that.
He said he couldn't tell. I look at the picture. A picture, 1,000 words,
Kate can tell, but the photographer can't tell. That's really quite interesting. Mark, listen, this is exactly what this is all about. I mean, among other things is, what's the best interest of the child?
Right.
I mean, look at the New York Times, the Miami Herald reports. That family, he was in a 2-bedroom house. He couldn't go to school. That great-uncle has had all kinds of brushes with the law before. And I'll tell you something. I don't like the system of government in Cuba, but I have seen nothing that tells me that Juan Miguel Gonzalez is an unfit father.
Well, the court decide. You and I don't get to decide, neither does Janet Reno. The court decides.
The Supreme Court says the Attorney General should decide. That's what the Supreme Court ruled in the Guatemalan case last year.
Let's look over her shoulder. She's not God.
Last word, Kate and Al. Next on Capital Gang, what's it mean for Castro? Bob, what's it mean for Castro? Welcome back. In Havana, Fidel Castro's government called for calm and did not declare victory, but the Cuban leader's enemies in Miami called him the victor.
It's not young Elian, it's not Miami, it's not America. The only winner will be Fidel Castro, because he would accomplish the ultimate goal that he wanted, to create disturbances in Miami.
Bob, is the mayor right in calling Fidel Castro the winner?
Absolutely. He is this international criminal, hated by his own people, in trouble with his military, has had a new birth by this incident. And he's played it beautifully, but he couldn't have played it this well unless President Clinton wanted him to. And that's the outrage.
That this was part of a deal?
Absolutely. They wanted, from the day he got in, President Clinton has wanted to make a deal with Castro. He couldn't because he shot down those civilian planes.
Oh, now, Bob, that's really stretching out. You know, I don't know how you reach such conclusions as that. The truth of the matter is decency and human bondage have prevailed today.
Bondage is the right word.
This father has a right to his son. He has a right to his son. I used to try a lot of cases where there were custody disputes, and thousands of cases like this are decided every day. They always go to the child goes to the mother or the father. It's very rare they go to anybody else.
The big problem
mother's
here
not
is
around.
back
The
in
father
Cuba,
has a-
back in Cuba, he has no rights to his son. Just like the 12 of his schoolmates who are being moved into this re-education camp, their parents have no rights with respect to whether or not they move there.
Al, who's the winner?
Well, I don't know who the winner is, but I'll tell you something. Castro needs Bob Novak's the world. They make him. He needs a boogeyman like that. He needs the right-wing politicians who are always criticizing him. If you normalize relations with Cuba, it'd do a couple things. Number one, it would modestly help the Cuban people. Number two, it would modestly help some American businesses. And number three, it would hurt Castro. He absolutely needs this issue. But I tell you, Mark, I think this actually sets back any prospects for normalization because I think it makes it a hotter issue.
I'll say two things. One, it sets it back if, for any reason, during the period the court has decided that Elian gets back to Cuba, goes through Mexico or anything of the sort. That's the first thing. Second thing, though, and I think I will make a prediction about winners and losers, and that is that Elian Gonzalez, will, in this case, and not anything about it, will not be mentioned at the Philadelphia Convention in the acceptance speech by either the Republican vice presidential nominee or presidential nominee. There'll be some people making shots, you know, in the early words, but it is not going to be. It's not going to be.
I'll make you a bet. I'll bet you a hot dog on that at the convention. But I'll ask you this: do you think Elian Gonzalez is going to have any kind of decent life the rest of his life?
I hope he does, Bob, and I hope it's in a free
I'm afraid not.
A better shot with his father.
And the gang will be back with the outrage of the week.
Our viewer outrage of the week is from Gladys Perez. She writes, "It's undeniable that the new millennium is not showing any signs of improvement. While 90 million children are living in poverty, newspapers in the United States are focusing on one child in the stock market. How many children must die to create a human rights conscience in the world?" If you have an outrage for next week, our email address is capgang@cnn.com or call the toll-free number at 1-888-847-8660. We will choose one outrage to air at this same time next week on the Capitol Gang.
Outrage of the Week is brought to you by MCI 5 cents every day, 5 cents a minute every evening, and all weekend long.
We've all read about Generation X and Gen Y. This is Generation D, the generation that was born digital.
Of Wisconsin Senator Gaylord Nelson gave us our first Earth Day. The nation's environment has been dramatically improved. Why? Because of the bold leadership of the United States government. The conservative chorus of gloom and doom, which predicted we could not have clean air and water and economic prosperity, were never more wrong. 98% of the lead and 2/3 of the carbon monoxide have been removed from the air we breathe, and the water quality of 98% of rivers, streams, and lakes have either been improved or remained the same. What a success story. Bob Novak.
Dr. Irwin Redliner, a pediatrician advising the Immigration Service about Elian Gonzalez, made a startling accusation. In Miami, he said the little boy was so disturbed, he beat a therapist. You're just reporting rumors, and, you know, that is really the Dr. Waver.
It's been reported in two sources that I can get for you, but it was verified by one of the psychologists that's treating him, and I don't remember her name. I read it in a newspaper report. I'll be happy to get that for you.
But he didn't send me anything, even after I called his office. Shame on you, Doctor.
Cato Byrne.
We know that religious celebrations don't interfere with President Clinton's aggression. To distract attention from his impeachment problems, he bombed Iraq during Ramadan, so there was no surprise he was willing to launch an assault on Easter weekend. But today, Bill Clinton also violated Al Gore's highest holy day. Where was history's most influential vice president during today's outrageous government action? Celebrating Earth Day with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Al Hunt.
Mark, we've heard a lot today about American family values from conservatives outraged about the Elian Gonzalez case. Strangely, we haven't heard much from pious right-wingers about the janitors in Los Angeles who are on strike because they can't get $1 an hour contract raise. These janitors currently make between $12,000 and $14,000 a year, below the poverty line, and obviously not nearly enough to raise a family. Apparently, to some, family values matter in Cuba, but not in Los Angeles.
This is Mark Shields. The game we back was what's going on in the world besides the Elian Gonzalez case.
The new fiber optic network.
These guys don't know what they're talking about, Mr. Clavin. I'll tell you who does. Williams Communications. Williams has been building telecom success stories for 15 years. And now, data, voice, video, private label IP, anything. Everything our customers need. Their network is so on top of it, they put a camel through a needle's eye. It was a small camel. Took some pushing. Oh, I can imagine the look on its face. A little bit like mine.
Closed captioning provided by USSearch.com. Employers, you need to know the background of your applicants before you hire. Conduct employment background screening at USSearch.com.
Tonight on Larry King Weekend, a special live edition to give you the latest on the Elian Gonzalez case. Tonight, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Until recently, these guys lived in a pretty elite place, and the closest ordinary investors came to them was tapping on the glass, hoping to get in. But at Daytech Online, we're rendering the old Wall Street club obsolete, so everyone can have the power of professional trading tools. Like Daytech's streamer that shows continuously updating quotes as the market moves, and a commitment to execute your order within 60 seconds, or the commission is waived. There are so many great reasons to be a Daytech customer. We're the only broker with 12 continuous hours to trade, and any online trade is just $9.99. The power of professional trading tools is no longer reserved for the privileged few.
Fund your account now and get a year of investment insight with a free online subscription to TheStreet.com's Real Money. To apply, call toll-free 1-877-75-DAYTECH or visit our special website.
Daytech Online. The rules are changing.
CNN, America's campaign headquarters.
Wednesday on CNN. Join host Wolf Blitzer as he brings voters face to face with Senate candidate First Lady Hillary Clinton. The New York Senate race, a late edition town meeting live Wednesday, 10 Eastern on CNN.
Live from Washington, the Capitol Gang.
Welcome back to the Capitol Gang. I'm Mark Shields with Al Hunt, Robert Novak, Cato Byrne, and former Senator Dale Bumpers of Arkansas. We'll look at other political developments this week, including the Confederate flag in South Carolina and trade in China. But first, the news from Brian Nelson.
Thanks, Mark. The latest now on today's dramatic developments in the custody battle over Elian Gonzalez. At this hour, the boy is getting reacquainted with his father, who greeted him at Andrews Air Force Base early this morning. That reunion took place just hours after U.S. agents burst into the home of Elian's Miami relatives and then pried him from the arms of one of the fishermen who'd rescued him. A female agent then took Elian out of the house, telling him in Spanish that he was going to see his father and he would not be sent anywhere in a boat. Those Miami relatives flew later in the day to Washington, D.C., hoping to meet with Elian and his father, stepmother, and baby half-brother. CNN's Patty Davis is outside of Andrews Air Force Base right now where the family is in seclusion. Patty, what's the latest from there?
That's right, Brian, that the Miami relatives, the entourage led by Senator Bob Smith, was turned away a little while ago by security at Andrews Air Force Base. The public information officer here said that they did not have permission to enter. In fact, Senator Bob Smith could have conceivably come on board the base, but he insisted on bringing people with him, and they would not allow it, so they were all turned away. Those Miami relatives flew to Washington's Reagan National Airport this afternoon to meet with Elliot and his father. Senator Smith said he'd spoken with the father's attorney, Greg Craig, requested such a meeting, and the attorney had said no. After they were turned away, the family and Senator Smith crossed the street, went over to the Holiday Inn. A huge crush of media, as you saw there, cameras running toward the family. They pulled into this Holiday Inn parking lot. They attempted to get out and walk. They attempted even to come to microphones to hold a press conference, our producer says, but they decided not to. They were a little worried about the huge amount of camera crews and onlookers who were there. There are something like 40 camera crews there on scene right at those gates across the street from the visitors' gates there where the family tried to enter, as well as something on the order of 40 protesters. Senator Smith later, though, did make a statement for the cameras saying that before he left Capitol Hill, he made a statement for the camera saying that he was disappointed that he wasn't able to get in. Here's what he had to say, though, however, before he left Capitol Hill for Andrews Air Force Base.
They're distraught. They're beside themselves with grief. I can't tell you what a horrendous meeting it was up there to be in that room and to see the agony on the faces of these people and in their hearts. It's horrible. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Never thought I'd see this in America.
Juan Miguel Gonzalez met here today as his son Elian arrived around 9:20 Eastern Time this morning here at Andrews Air Force Base. A reunion here captured on pictures by the U.S. Marshals, still photos released of a father and son very happy to be together, smiles. You can see Juan Miguel Gonzalez's new wife and their baby also took part in that reunion. Obviously, everyone very happy to be together. We're told that Juan Miguel and Elian hope to go to the Y River Plantation nearby in a couple of days to perhaps spend more time after they have a couple days here at Andrews Air Force Base, reuniting, getting to know one another after 5 long months apart. I'm Patty Davis, CNN Live at Andrews Air Force Base.
Patty, thank you. For the Cuban community in Miami, this morning's raid on the Gonzalez house was a bitter pill. All day, they've been expressing their displeasure with protests. And CNN's Mark Potter joins us now live from Miami with the latest there. Mark?
Well, it's a lot quieter now than it was earlier today. As you can see behind me, there are officers standing by in their vehicles. But we're now at a situation where cleanup crews have actually come in from the city to clean up areas where fires have been set. It's a much quieter time now than it was earlier today when police were battling the crowds with tear gas and pepper gas and making a number of arrests. The police department spokesman estimates that between 125 and 150 people were arrested today. They haven't calculated the exact number. We're also told that 4 officers were hurt, 3 of them struck by a man wielding a baseball bat who drove his car first through a barricade. Another officer by the Gonzalez home where Elian had been kept, which is 5 blocks from here, was hit in the head with a rock. We're told that none of those injuries was serious. At the Gonzalez home a short while ago, a CNN crew was threatened by some members of the crowd. There is very strong anti-Castro sentiment in this community, and CNN has been covering the situation in Cuba as well as it has been covering the situation here. Community leaders in this community are expressing their disappointment over the Clinton administration's and the Justice Department's handling of the Elian Gonzalez situation. But at a news conference a short while ago, they also urged the community to calm down and to express their feelings within the confines of the law. A much quieter situation tonight than it was earlier today. Police are still on standby and in force, watching for any other incidents that may crop up later tonight. This is Mark Potter, CNN, reporting live from Miami.
All right, Mark, thanks. A mass rally continues this evening for Elian Gonzalez in his native Cuba. Hundreds of thousands of Cubans have gathered at a sugar mill for speeches and song. Cuban television began broadcasting news of the reunion of Elian and his father around noon local time. The government urged Cubans to remain calm and not to take to the streets. In a programming note, CNN's coverage of the Elian Gonzalez case continues tonight. Coming up at 8 Eastern, a special report anchored by Darren Kagan and Wolf Blitzer, including in-depth look at the day's developments. And at 9 Eastern, a special edition of Larry King Live. One of the topics, the impact of today's developments on Elian himself. And that's the latest from Atlanta. Capitol Gang will return from Washington after this short break.
What if you just...
For a vice presidential run. But Senator McCain made news this week when he returned to South Carolina, the scene of February's fiercely contested Republican presidential primary, there to talk about the Confederate flag.
I believe the flag should be removed from your capital. I should have done this earlier, when an honest answer could have affected me personally. I did not do so for one reason alone. I feared that if I answered honestly, I could not win the South Carolina primary. So I chose to compromise my principles. I broke my promise to always tell the truth.
Al Hunt, is this a profile in courage or is it self-indulgence?
Well, probably both, Mark. Look, I find it refreshing that a politician not only says I was wrong, but says I did it for politically motivated reasons. And he was wrong. That flag was raised over that South Carolina Capitol not in 1862, but in 1962. It's a symbol of racial hatred. It did take John McCain 8 weeks. That's too long, but you know, maybe it's a model now for repentance. It's been 80 months, for instance, since Bob Novak wrongly said the Budget Act of 1993 with a tax increase on the rich would destroy the economy. This is a model for you now, Bob. Repent.
Bob, are you ready to repent?
Not hardly. I got 4 words for our friend Senator McCain. It's too late, John. It's too late after the election is over, after you have run, after you've been defeated, to go down there in this self-indulgent trip. And what it is, there is an undercurrent, an implication that George W. Bush should do the same. And, you know, I tell you, when John McCain has been living out on this praise and adulation from liberals, including liberal journalists who sit at this table, and that, I believe...
Who's that, Mark? I hope it's me.
I really believe that was the most disheartening thing, because that was something, if you're going to do it on time, it's okay. It's too late now.
Let me just say, I could not disagree more emphatically with Robert Novak. I think any time somebody has the guts to say he was wrong, and those of us who covered John McCain, you among them, Bob, know that he knew he was wrong when he was doing it. Right. It was the only scripted answer he had in the whole campaign. He was uncomfortable every time he read it, and he admits that he was wrong. And I'm sorry if he and Governor Bush are going to meet in Pittsburgh, just the two of them and their food tasters, on May 9th. And maybe he'll get Governor Bush to realize that the hottest places in hell are reserved for those in a time of moral crisis remain neutral.
You know what else he was wrong about, though? He said, I'm probably going to be roundly criticized for this. And of course he's not roundly criticized.
What do you mean? We just heard it from you and
Bob. No, he's not. But that doesn't matter to him. That doesn't matter to him. The New York Times announced it was a great display of political courage, belatedly but powerfully. The senator yet, met our expectations. You know, a lot of people don't think he's too late. A lot of people, Republicans, think he's looking forward to 2004, that may have been the first speech in that next campaign. But if that is the case, he is again playing to his base in the media at the expense of fellow Republicans, and that remains his problem in the Republican Party.
Because he's moving his party from a position where they should not be. That's a high service to his party, isn't it,
racial bigotry.
I tell you, I know John McCain very well, served with him for a long time, and I think this was personally therapeutic to him. I think he had to do it. I think it was eating his heart out. Yeah. Now the question is, what if he had carried South Carolina? Or what if he'd have been the nominee by 15 delegates? Mm-hmm. Would he have made the same admission? That's a different thing.
You don't think he would, do you?
No, but let me tell you something, Bob. I've sat in conferences, and you know about the conferences where a politician who's running for president or even for the Senate, he sits around with his advisors, and he says, what should my position on this be? And they tell him what his position ought to be. In his heart of hearts, he doesn't agree with it, but That's the way you minimize the damage. That's the way you maximize your votes.
Al, that's why it's not courage, because there is nothing.
No,
there
Dale
is,
said
just
it
a
is
minute.
courage.
Yeah.
He said it is courage.
No, I say that's why it is not courage for John McCain to say that, because there is absolutely nothing at stake. Courage is when you take risks. When you say, I'm going to do something, I'm going to come out for something that is not popular, like keeping Elian Gonzalez in this country. That's what takes courage. It doesn't take
Coming
courage.
out for tax cuts, for instance?
Yeah.
It might.
That's courageous.
It might be courageous. Yes, it would. But see, the problem is that John McCain for 18 years was a ordinary conservative Republican on the Hill. And suddenly he has found the secret of how to find adulation from people who don't like Republicans and have no use for the Republican Party.
You know what's
and we can do
remarkable
it by doing things like
You know what's
that.
remarkable was Bob, about every 2 weeks, says John McCain has now done the worst thing he's ever done. I don't know how McCain keeps raising the bar. I think it's going to be very, very tough for him.
John McCain, though, the good senator, probably does miss that kind of attention he had during the primaries. And what we're learning is the kind of attention he can expect from the media is in direct proportion to the kind of problem he might be posing for Governor Bush. And this, a lot of people think, is just the latest example of that. Oh, the media would be bored silly if he enthusiastically endorsed George Bush. They'd be bored silly. They'd stop covering him.
Kate, I mean, if you saw John McCain in South Carolina, he came back, he had lunch with Colin Powell. He's been wanting to do this. He's been wanting to do it to set the record straight. I mean, he wants to feel good about this campaign. That's not a bad thing to do. Most candidates on the right side of the equation, you know, I wish they were plagued by similar problems. The same people, Kate, who went to South Carolina and talked about the block vote in 1964 and 1968, which was shorthand, as you know and I know, for the black vote. And John McCain refuses to be associated with that kind of politics.
The Confederate flag is a symbol, in South Carolina, is a symbol of racial hatred. Now, that's undeniable, isn't it?
Does he want to make? Does he want to feel better about the? Does he want to feel better about the? Does he want to feel better about the Michigan campaign he ran, smearing George Bush with being an anti-Catholic? Does he still feel good about that? Why hasn't he apologized for that?
He didn't have to say anything.
That's right.
I think he should get the benefit of the doubt. Anytime a public figure like John McCain goes before the American people and say, "I have deceived you and I'm sorry."
Absolutely.
Yeah. I tell you what. You know, I want to be friendly with John McCain because we used to be pretty good friends. Yes, I do.
It's a hell of a time to start, Novak.
I think he can have one more anguished cry of expiation.
What would that be?
He can say, I was wrong, and I was just pandering to the Al Hunts of the world when I said George Bush's tax cut was a tax cut for the rich, because that was demagoguery. I shouldn't have done it. It was not good Republican philosophy. He does that, and all is forgiven.
Was it a tax
All is forgiven.
Hey, Bob, if Fidel Castro came out for a capital gains tax cut tomorrow, you'd forgive all. In a minute you would.
Now we've found the
Fidel's seen the
we
light.
have found the Rosetta Stone.
Right.
We found the Rosetta Stone.
Right.
John McCain saying tax cuts for the rich for the rich is what has made you his #1 enemy. That's the last
Can we
word.
get Fidel in there
We
too,
found
though?
something. And Fidel to follow. Next on Capital Gang, Dick Gephardt takes a stand. And a bold one indeed. Welcome back. House Democratic leader Richard Gephardt took his position on the proposed permanent normalized trade with China that is backed by President Clinton.
To truly honor our values, we have no choice but to oppose granting this trade status to China. And in so doing, I believe that we will promote America's long-term economic interest as well.
Cato Byrne, does Dick Gephardt's stand doom the China trade bill?
No, apparently it won't, Mark. I guess what Dick Gephardt is telling the Democratic Party's labor base is that he will stand shoulder to shoulder with them as the China trade bill passes. His opposition to it wasn't surprising. What is surprising is that despite his opposition to it, he had the nerve to announce 2 weeks ago that the Democrats are the party for the new economy. The majority of Democrats in the House oppose this trade bill. But business, what this really points up, it seems to me, is the stupidity of business that keeps pouring all this money into the Democratic Party for campaigns that will put Dick Gephardt in the Speaker's chair, at which point there will be no such thing as China trade bills.
Bob Novak, is the China trade bill in some trouble because of Dick Gephardt's position?
No, I think he's playing a very cute game. It's the whole Democratic. This is the one issue that is really splitting the Democratic Party. Democratic Party is more unified than I've ever seen it in my lifetime. Mostly on the wrong issues, but it's very unified. But they're split on this issue, and I think there's a lot of nuancing going on here. You have Gore's position. Gore is for it, but he says he'll improve the situation when he gets to be president. David Bonner, the House Democratic whip, is whipping everybody to vote against it. And Gephardt is right in the middle. He's saying, I'm against the thing not on economic grounds, but on moral grounds, but it's not a party position. So I think Mr. Gephardt has put himself right in the middle of the Democratic mix.
Do you think it helps the Democrats win the House?
I don't think so, but I think the thing is going to pass narrowly. I think Bill Daley, the Secretary of Commerce, is doing a good job on it. I think the Republicans are being responsible rather than partisan. Some of them don't want to give President Clinton the credit, but most, I don't feel that way.
Dale, what about Gephardt?
First of all, Bob Novak and I have finally found common ground. I happen to strongly favor the PNTR bill, permanent relations with China and trade. And so far as Dick Gephardt's concerned, I've always had a deep admiration for him. I consider him a friend. We both went to the same law school.
That's right.
And I think that he's an honorable man, and I think this is a very difficult decision for him. I think it was a difficult decision for him intellectually, and a difficult decision for him because he wants to cooperate with the president. So I give him a lot of credit, and I think that he's also probably going to take a rather low profile in the future.
In the future, I mean this
On
debate, on this debate.
legislation.
Al Hunt.
You know, Mark, just as a broken clock is right twice a day, Bob Novak actually got it right. I agree with virtually everything he said. I put a slightly different twist on it. I think this is going to pass. Bob, I'm not sure it's going to be close in the final analysis. I think Dick Gephardt really handled a very divisive issue for the Democratic Party with some real skill. He did oppose it, but at the same time, he is privately helping Sandy Levin and others work out side agreements that are going to make it much easier to pass. He's not working against this. And I must say also that I think labor is pretty much of a paper tiger in this. The top priority for labor is to have the Democrats take back control of the House. And the idea that they're going to go and punish a member who votes for China's for permanent status and risk losing the House is just nonsense.
Well, I think I have a dissent. I think labor is having it both ways here, and what it does is reveal the deep divisions within labor between the industrial unions, the old great basis of the CIO and the real labor movement politically in this country, and the service employee and the white-collar unions. I honestly don't think of the state, county, municipal employees, public workers, I don't think they care about this bill because they know that the federal government can't get up and go to China, go anyplace else, take its workforce, and they're giving Al Gore a pass. They're basically saying to Al Gore, you can be for it, and we'll endorse you. At the same time, leaning on an awful lot of House Democrats and making life very unpleasant for them on this issue. I happen to think Gephardt is right, and it's interesting. This is an issue where he's with the majority of Americans on it. I mean that 3 out of 4 Americans believe that globalization drives down wages, that the Chinese are essentially not 1.2 billion customers, but potentially 1.2 billion reduced slave laborers and available.
We're really doing terrible, aren't we?
Well, but that's the concern and the anxiety that people do have. And I'll tell you, there's a few very honest conservatives around. Steve Moore of the Cato Institute being one of them, who said on a recent trip to China, he said 10 years after he'd been there earlier, the economic freedom was considerably improved, and the political repression, he said, sadly, was worse than it had been 10 years earlier. So your line, Bob, about just more and more engagement is going to be better for the Chinese hasn't led to human rights improvement.
I agree with Steve on economics. I think he's wrong on that. And I tell you, China's not Iowa. You understand what that means?
What?
It's just not Iowa.
Is it Kansas?
It's not Kansas. I mean, it's a different culture.
We got that.
And I think it's arrogant on part of you to say we're going to have our political system. Their life is so much better than it was when I first went to China, 30 years ago, that there's just no comparison.
Mark, I think labor is wrong on this so far as jobs are concerned. It's a win-win situation for the United States. If we pass the PNTR legislation, with that goes World Trade Organization status for the Chinese. That means we're going to sell the Chinese a lot more goods. Win, lose, or draw, the Chinese are going to sell exactly the same amount to us. So we're going to pick up a lot of jobs, and we're going to do a lot more trade with China if this bill passes, and that means a lot more jobs in this country.
So why is Dick Gephardt opposed to it if it's going to bring all these jobs to us?
Who, Gephardt?
Yeah.
I have no idea, because I think he's just dead wrong on that point.
Well, I got to say, I mean, we had the same argument in 1993 about NAFTA was going to improve the environment, it was going to raise Mexican workers' wages. It hasn't, and at the same time, it has hurt the environment, and it hasn't slowed down immigration.
That, Mark.
Okay,
that's not.
We got to go right now, but I want to thank you for being with us, Dale Bumpers.
Thank you.
And this very extended Capitol Gang, and extended it has been. Next on CNN, Darren Kagan and Wolf Blitzer host the Elian Gonzalez case, a special report. I'm Mark Shields saying good night for the Capitol Gang.